have delicious chicken, fries, and a Pepsi. Because big dreamers need a big deal. Bridging the Caribbean gaps across the globe on social media. We are Facebooking, IGing, TikToking, and Twittering at The Bridge 99 FM.
It's Jamaican, it's Caribbean, to the world on The Bridge 99 FM. You heard? It's Jamaican, it's Caribbean on The Bridge 99 FM. You heard?
Good afternoon. Welcome to Let's Talk Justice. It's now a new year. It's January 2023. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
My name is Jade Williams, the Policy and Advocacy Specialist at JFJ.
So we're just coming off the Christmas period, so if our faces are looking a little bit rounder, we managed to have some fun, I assume, while we did some work. We're running a little bit behind, but what we're going to be doing for today is just do a conversation around some of the main things or major human rights issues that faced us in the country in 2022, and having a discussion with Ms. Danielle Archer, who's a director at the National Integrity Action, as well as Professor Rosalie Hamilton, who is a founding director at the Institute of Law and Economics, and she's a member of the Advocates Network as well. So we're just going to be having a conversation about setting the human rights agenda for 2023. Now, before we get into that conversation, we are just going to be doing our usual roundup, Jade, in terms of the main human rights issues of the week, as well as you will go through the rights of the week and that sort of thing coming out. Now, just a little bit of update, and let me start with what we would call the low-hanging fruit of the human rights issues that are coming up. Just to point out that Minister Floyd Green will be making a statement to Parliament today that will focus on the NIDS regulations, and that is something that JFJ has been calling for some while now. For those who are listening in, the regulations would be giving some operational teeth, framework, if you will, in terms of how the NIDS law will be governed. So we'll be paying close attention to what Minister Floyd Green says today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. The major issue as well that arose this week is a conversation or issue that came up 2 years ago, and that surrounds the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA. Now, Nationwide News Network broke a story 2 years ago, and a follow-up report was tabled or will be tabled in Parliament today by the Office of the Children's Advocate. So 2 years ago, there was a conversation around Mr. Carl Robansky, who provides some funding support to one of the transitional facilities that are governed by the CPFSA, that is called the Father's House. Now, this is a transitional facility that ensures that, I think we may have to take a break. We're having some technical difficulties, and I'm hearing some feedback. So to the producers, let's take a break. Okay, it's now gone. So one of the conversations that arose in 2021, and the matter started from allegations that Mr. Robansky, he had some infractions against him in the United States that suggested that he had inappropriate conversations and dialogue with a minor of a sexual nature.
Indeed.
He was apparently relieved from his duties in the United States, and he came to Jamaica, apparently, and provided some funding support to this transitional facility that is governed by the CPFSA. Based on our preliminary review of the report that will be tabled in Parliament, but JFJ, we managed to get a preview of that report. What it suggested is that even though the allegations against Mr. Rubansky apparently became known to the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Rosalie Gage-Gray, of the CPFSA, apparently inaction and willful blindness, I'm using the words of the OCA report,
Yes.
came to be. So in other words, this matter came up to the attention of the CEO. Nothing was done. Outside of nothing being done, the inaction was apparently excused because no criminal conviction, if you will,
Had been
previously happened
I see.
from the allegations in the United States. There are allegations coming out of the OCA report that suggested that the CEO, Mrs. Gage-Gray, was also less than truthful in her interviews with the Office of the Children's Advocate. So in other words, questions were asked, was Mr. Rubansky in contact with any minor? And the CEO apparently said no. Subsequent reports or review of the visitor's log indicated that, one, Mr. Rubansky was in very close contact with minors. The conversation of minors also arose, whether or not minors were being housed at the facility, because remember, it's a transitional facility now.
Yes.
So the CPFSA will ensure that wards of the state up to age 18 is cared for, but once they reach 18, you ensure that they can transition into regular life, if you will. But the report suggests that minors were actually housed at the facility, though denied initially. Apparently, when the CEO was pressed on the matter, she then indicated, they're not housed routinely, but in situations of emergency, they will be placed there. So the report suggested that the CEO was less than truthful. Now, in March 2021, a statement was issued by the Minister of Youth, Minister Favour Williams, that said that she was asking for the CEO of CPFSA to undergo an investigation or to undertake an investigation into the allegations, to sever ties with Mr. Rubansky. And severing ties would mean, I assume, funding and so on. Apparently, Minister now made public statements to say that those ties were severed, and that was upon a report submitted by the CEO. So when this particular report now in 2023 is being tabled by the OCA, it is less than, what's the word I'm looking for? Flattering to the CEO. And the questions then arise, should Mrs. Gage-Gray be asked to resign from her duties? No, JFJ won't be making an official statement as yet. We're just recounting some of the major issues in the report. But I suggest that persons listen into Parliament later on when Minister Favour Williams will be making an official statement. JFJ, we will make our official statement later in the afternoon after we have a chance to listen to what Minister Williams is saying to the public, to the Jamaican people, about what is clearly an institutional failure in the protection of the nation's children. So please ensure that we keep up with what's happening in the news cycle. I know Bridge perhaps will also be doing its own review of what's happening, but JFJ will be making a statement later on, perhaps around 4 o'clock. All right? So those are the major issues coming up.
Thank you, Mikel, for that introduction. Quite a heavy topic for this week, starting out our first show of the year. And it reminds me of one of our policy areas, calling for reform of the Child Care and Protection Act in particular, about having foreign nationals who are child sex predators to be included on our local registry.
And this belief that everything religious is good. So let's put our mental health care in religious leaders. let's have an open day with our children simply because someone claims to be associated with a particular religion. Complete failure of the state. But as I said, we will see what the specifics are later on.
All right. And I just want to quickly do our right of the day today, which we're talking about how your rights are protected from certain acts of parliament. So your rights cannot be infringed by acts of parliament, save as only may be demonstrably justifiable in a democratic, free and democratic society. And this means that parliament cannot make a law that abridges your rights, breaches your rights, or infringes your rights unless it can be justified in a free and democratic society. And that's your right of the day. We also have a did you know today? Yes, or did you know the primary purpose of bail is to ensure that a defendant appears in court to answer for an alleged crime. And this is because a person has a presumption of innocence before they are convicted of any crime, and the government must prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
All right, so our human rights issues, as I stated earlier, we're going to be joined by Ms. Danielle Archer of National Integrity Action, as well as Professor Rosalie Hamilton of the Advocates Network, and who's also a founding member of the Institute of Law and Economics, ILE for short. Now, in 2022, we had several human rights issues and themes, not only that JJ focused on, but certainly that arose in the news cycle. I think one of the biggest news story coming out of 2022 centered around the death penalty, and now behind bars serving couple decades. Yes. He was issued life sentence to be served concurrently, and that is Rashane Barnett. If you remember, commonly called the Cocoa Peace Massacre. So I think that was the main issue. JFJ came in some public, what do you call it now? Well, I wouldn't want to use the word scrutiny, fire, if you will, for lack of a better terminology, because we, as you know, from a principled position, the organization, we do not support death penalty at all. So we weren't supporting the actions of Mr. Barnett, but certainly we made the call that the organization is not for the death penalty. I think the other major issue that arose during 2022 would be the use of the state of public emergency, what is one of the major crime-fighting tool of the government. And I think when you look at the SOE, for example, one begs the question in terms of how effective it is. And it touched on other citizen and security issues. For example, when we look at the number of persons who were killed by the security forces, and we're not saying that they're extrajudicial killings because we look at things at a case-by-case basis. But the last number that we had for 2022 indicated that 134 persons were killed by the security forces, which surpasses the 2021 number of 127 persons. When we look at the murder rate as well, the statistics are not looking good. The murder rate ending 2022 stood at 1,498 persons being killed, which is an increase compared to the previous year, which I believe from memory is 1,474 persons. So those were the major things, I think. What else you have, Jade?
Well, we also had a couple of other issues arising. We did see the unfortunate spill in the Rio Cobre River caused by the Windalco Bauxite Mining Company that has severely impacted those communities in St. Catherine, fisher folk, farmers, and residents who rely on the river for their water supply. And we would have realized through this spill that there is serious gaps in our environmental legislative framework that need to be addressed, where the compensation available for these persons is woefully inadequate. We would have also seen several pieces of legislation being reviewed over the course of the year, including the Cybercrimes Act. We saw the Integrity Commission Act, Protected Disclosure, the Firearms Act, the Bail Act, the last four of which JFJ did submit submissions on. And we also saw that the administration has given his indication as to some of its legislative focus areas for this coming year, including the Domestic Violence Act and the Child Care and Protection Act. And of course, as we know, the the crime plan, the crime bill that is being promised to be tabled in the first quarter of this year.
To clarify, not crime bill, the Enhanced Security Measures Act.
Security Measures
specifically.
Act. Yes.
And also to add to the legislation conversation, the Integrity Commission Act, we don't have a report coming out of Parliament as yet. NIA will be with us, so that's one of the conversations we want to have with them. JFJ will also be making a presentation on the protected disclosure, commonly the Whistleblower Act, in January?
Yes, the 25th.
The 25th,
yes.
Great. So we await the reports on these pieces of legislation in terms of what the Joint Select Committee will accept. So we're going to be joined by NIA and the ILE Representative Advocates Network, but we're going to take a break and then we return.
The 99 gives you feel-good music without the gaps.
Imagine your advertising dollar reaching your Caribbean and diaspora target beyond borders in a single rotation. It happens only on the bridge. Call now to advertise 876-669-5000.
It's about business for me. I'm in, I'm out, easy access to all my meetings.
It's the range of rooms for me. I love the gym. I love the pool.
The restaurant and the bar do it for me. It's definitely the service. Our hotel in the heart of New Kingston, Jamaica's business capital, seamlessly blending boutique-style guest service with the highest level of professionalism, luxurious accommodation, and every modern amenity. Book now, 876-968-6222, or visit ourhotelja.com.
Rights we should all know.
If any member of the security force hits you, abuses you, refuses to give you your phone call, or otherwise violates your rights, complain to the police on duty, the JP who visits the lockup, the public defender, the inspectorate of constabulary, or the police at the station. With every right, there is a responsibility.
Brought to you by the Office of the Public Defender.
It's 29 years of the People's Show! Let me salute!
2023, Friday, January the 20th.
Big Mountain! Third World! Hodiram! Youngster!
Heavy Linen! Abyssinia! Asian Boss! Tobacco Pyramid!
Botany Price! A.K.A. Bounty Killer!
Lady G! Louis Culture!
Gates open 5 p.m. Action begins 7 p.m.
Tickets at 8,500 pre-sold and 9,000 at the gate.
29 years of niceness! The People's Show!
Endorsed by Bridge 99 FM.
Reggae, dancehall, Afrobeat, soca. We've got the flavor right here on the Bridge 99 FM.
The people's champion. Our mission is love.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing the main human rights issues that arose in 2022 and what we would be calling setting the human rights agenda for 2023. Now, Jade and I, towards the end of the program, we will share some of the main issues that we want JFJ to be focusing on. But for right now, we're joined by Professor Rosalie Hamilton of the Advocates Network, as well as Ms. Danielle Archer of the National Integrity Action. Welcome, ladies.
Good morning. Good afternoon, really.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
And Happy New Year to you and your listeners.
Thank you. I'm joined by Jade Williams, and we're still in the early part of January, so season's greetings, or it's just Happy New Year?
It's Happy New Year, so the Christmas countdown has ended, and we have restarted it.
Very well. Professor Hamilton, let us start with you. The Advocates Network issued a press release, rather, on some of the main things that you're calling for. Can you just summarize for our listeners where Advocates Network wants the Parliament and the country general to focus for this year?
Well, I'd love us to start with the focus where it ought to be, which is on the people.
Yes.
And our focus is really on encouraging Jamaicans at home and abroad to include advocacy and to include active engagement to change the landscape of Jamaica. And so we start and want to anchor the focus on the Jamaican people. You can make a difference to improving human rights and governance in Jamaica. And so we start there. And we ask and encourage Jamaicans to join our advocacy, your advocacy, any advocacy with respect to the issues. And we summarized 10 themes that we want to pick up this year. And they followed from the range of advocacy that we have started from 2021 to today. And it includes the issue of the Republic. It includes the kinds of comprehensive support that we need to solve crime. It includes the education system. I mean, a long time we're talking about improving education.
Yes.
It's time to deal with that. It's a long story that underpins a lot of the issues that we have in Jamaica, so we have to focus there. Accountability and adherence to the rule of law. I mean, we see breaches on the part of ministries, departments, and agencies of government. That's not good enough. We want to improve better standards of representation. Tackling issues of land use, agricultural land now being used to, facilitate real estate development, etc., when we have food security issues and climate change issues. Those are huge issues. And of course, gender-based rights and violence issues continue to plague us, and our access to beaches, rivers, etc., livable wages for employees, and working conditions for farm workers and others. That just summarizes a whole clutch of issues that we want to tackle, and they have been unfinished business, unresolved business from 2001, 2002, since we've actively collaborated as a network to advocate on these issues.
Great, thanks. Ms. Archer, I know the principal director, Professor Trevor Monroe, he did what I would call a well-written article, as expected, in the paper recently, summarizing some of the main human rights issues that he hopes NIA will focus on. From where you sit, what are some of those things that you think we ought to be focusing on and tackling for 2023?
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. You did indicate that Prof. Monroe's article upholding justice and advancing civic action in 2023 is a good place to start. A good place to start because one of the things NIA wants to do is to revitalize, to re-energize civic action in 2023. We know it has a lot of power. We understand that people are eager to participate, and we want to encourage that as the main prong of action for 2023. We've seen it work in 2022, particularly where you're talking about the festival song and saying, no, we don't have one, and then people started to talk about, yes, we could get more. You see civic action rising, people talking and saying, let's get this done. So for NIA and where we stand, we're always advancing the image, expectation, and the ideal of integrity. So where we are, we want to focus on that. We want to have more civic engagement in encouraging integrity in our governance. We want to ask, perhaps even louder if we can, getting more people to ask for having the code of conduct signed by a parliamentarian so that they too have some guideline that we can have as an expectation for them to do. We spoke about the gag clause when I was with you last. Certainly we're going to be agitating on that because that advances governance. You know, in the context of asking for, encouraging and imploring people to get involved in advocacy, to find a civic action, stick to it and call out the government, call out our leaders, whether it's in private sector or in the public sector, call out people for the things that they're doing wrong so that we can grow as Jamaica and as Jamaicans. Because last year, we have the statistic that reflects that 80% of Jamaicans think that the government is corrupt.
Yes.
The same 80% think that we live in a corrupt country. We have to have that mindset now that say, me is not just 120 up to 20%. Let's flip it. Let's change it. Let's start demanding more integrity in the actions that we have as citizens. And that's where NIA wants to put a foothold. We have a launch tomorrow, which we're looking forward to, about citizen security and partnership, trying to grow involvement. So we're stepping the new year in the right direction by harnessing partnerships to encourage citizen security. We want to do much more of that, and we want to see people. And this is where we are at one with Professor Hamilton. We want to have the attention focused on the people and get them back to the point where they are integral, they understand their importance in the whole system of governance.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a break and then Jade will pick up when we return. Please stay with us.
Go to bed with us. Wake up with us. Spend your day with us. We're all you'll ever need. The Bridge 99 FM, on air and online all the time.
We still a do it big, big, big.
KFC still a do it big. KFC Big Deal. The time by KFC Big Deal is
1:30.
I put it down on the wrong one.
Hold up, wait a minute.
6.
On the bridge,
Every Tuesday at 10 p.m.
we talk about the forbidden, the inevitable, the truth. Nothing is untouched. It's live with me, dancehall queen Carlene.
Download the Bridge app, be on the 99, and tune in this Tuesday after dark.
The conversation is intellectual and maybe tantric, but always entertaining as we hear from the expert and you.
SOD, this Tuesday at 10 p.m.
Lord Keisha, you hear about the little girl we get shot in the community last week?
What do you mean?
I'm here say things are going to get even crazy, I know, cause them boy they smuggling some new gun the other day.
If me could have said something without bad man hear about my name, I would have talked with me know a long time, you know. Cause for them foolishness always come back for hurt the innocent people in the community.
But you know, say, them have one program where you can actually give information to the police secretly, you know. Customs join up with Crime Stop and start one campaign named Tell Us. So people can give tips and nobody nothing know say them. Them all give out money if the reward lead to an arrest or them can find the gun them.
Boy, honestly, me kind of afraid, you know. But things can't continue, so. Me ready to tell them what me know.
You're right. We have to put a stop to it.
The Jamaica Customs Agency wants you to tell us what you know. Call Crime Stop at 311 to share information about illegal guns and other contraband coming through our borders. The Jamaica Customs Agency, country above self.
Yeah, this is Angie from Gardentown. In the square, right at Miss Lou's statue. Come check out Kentucky Drinking Salon with the top shelf liquor them. See them like how you see the Bridge 99 FM to the world.
KFC, we still a do it big, big, big. KFC. Work hard every day with determination. Anything you set your mind to, you do it big. No underestimate your potential. You a real big deal and you must win.
SPIC in your area. KFC with the taste and the flavor. We a big deal, so adapt we are hard and we do big things with no
KFC still a do it big. KFC Big Deal. Enjoy 3 pieces of delicious chicken, fries and a Pepsi. Because big dreamers need a big deal.
It's 29 years of the People's Show. Let me see you.
2023, Saturday the 21st of January.
People turn that shit. Arrow, Dunkley, Johnny Clark, Chelsea Daddy, Chelsea Way, Imaru, Tafari, Andy, George Nook, 5-star Rascal. Open 5 p.m. Action begins 7 p.m.
Tickets at 8,500 pre-sold and 9,000 at the gate.
29 years of niceness. The People's Show. Ready. Salute.
Endorsed by Bridge 99 FM.
Open sesame, here comes Rastaman.
So what are you eating? What are you drinking?
Abacadabra, catch me if you can.
What are you reading and what are you thinking? Join I, Lalabella Gorilla, aka Tony Rebel on Raspirance as we trot on the Bridge 99 FM. Uplifting reasoning to uplift the nation. Tune in to Raspirance every Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. for a fresh experience on the Bridge 99 FM to the world. Fire Fridays!
Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We are discussing our advocacy issues for 2022 as well as setting our human rights agenda for 2023. We are joined by Daniel Archer of NIA and Professor Rosalie Hamilton of Advocates Network. And I heard before the break, both of you talking, I think one point that stuck between both of you was civic participation. And I wonder if any of you have any thoughts on what the challenges are to civic participation right now. I know some that we would have identified, for example, political affiliation can affect civic participation. Just knowledge about your responsibility and your power in governance situations can also affect that participation. But what, if anything else, do you think affects that? And what can we do to address those issues into 2023? I pose that to either of you. Professor Hamilton, you can go first.
Okay, I would say that a big part of this is really understanding that role and the power that we have. And a good place to remind Jamaicans is what happened just last year with respect to the festival song, right? And, we made a lot of noise and before we have it. And to remind people that back in 2014, we had that issue of the bank tax, and we heard the voice of Jamaicans people speaking up and the tax change. So we need, of course, a more structured way in which we can include the voice of Jamaicans in decision making as a matter of course. So we ought not to be, burning tire and blocking road and that kind of thing in order to for our representatives to hear us. And so that gets into the more important conversations about what needs to be done. But I think understanding of the power of our voice, understanding the extent to which when we use our voice, it does and it can matter. And how, when we don't, it negatively impacts us in many ways. An example I like to use is what happened with respect to the Nutrition Products Limited. We had an Auditor General's report 2021 that pointed out that about 143 million of connected party transactions. These are questionable transactions that may be fraught with conflicts of interest, right? And that importantly, students that were fed reduced from about 156,000 students that we were able to feed in 2015, 2016. So about 18,000 students in 2019, 2020. So we're able to feed less students. The cost of production went up, moved from about $18, I think, to about $111 per unit, because there was not adequate supervision of that board, and things were happening, and it's been happening. Successive administration, we've seen this kind of management, and it's that kind of impact on our children that we're talking about, and that if for no other reason, we need to protect our children, and it's the oversight, it's the advocacy, it's the holding accountability that is important. When we're talking about human rights, we're also talking about governance. We're talking about, they are mutually reinforcing. We need good governance to ensure and to guarantee human rights. And so I think if we understand that better and understand that these are bread and butter issues, these impact the lives of people. You talked about the Roshane Clark case. That's about a man who had been working as a taxi driver, trying to earn income for his family. And now when you take him away, lock him up for months, whatever the facts are of that case, those children in that family are directly impacted. Yes. So I think part of our engagement with the public is to say, this is not just great sounding ideas and principles. It impacts lives. Yes. And it leads to not only psychological damage of our children who go to school and are not properly fed, but it also can lead to the loss of lives where we see that people are held against their will in prison and some of them ultimately end up dead.
Thank you so much, Prof. To put that question to you, as Jade outlined, Daniel, one other thing is, we hear the DPP, for example, echoing a concern that was raised last year, the number of jurors that we have. And I hear the public, for example, saying we want justice, we need to lock up the criminals. But I think that role that they play isn't readily understood. I hear another conversation, for example, if JFJ makes a statement, you hear people cursing us out that we elect the government to act, left them alone. But though you have a representative democracy, what role do citizens play? And I think my question for you is, what can we do as civil society organizations, political parties, youth groups, what can we do to help citizens understand their role? What is our effort?
Your effort is where you started when you talked about what's our role, telling us what we can do. I think we've gone from that point where we started at the point where we think everything starts and ends with our political parties. At the government, we elect at the government to do it. Excuse me for parlance. We don't recognize that it is our vote that elects them, and our vote has value. It's currency. So we can't sell it. We shouldn't buy it. We should take an interest in our vote. I think civil society needs to encourage people to participate. And when I say civil society, it doesn't mean joining Advocates Network or NIA. No. We have neighborhood watches that can come on stream and start looking out for the community. We have the little groups, the community groups. We have many, when I was growing up, we have the community centers where you would have certain kind of social activity. You play ball, football, basketball, something to let the community come together. This is how you have participation and action, by bringing it back to the people. Many people don't come to the launches and the talks that we're having at Pegasus. What people do in their communities is where we need to meet them at and share with them how they can participate. If I can hearken to our anthem, it says, stand up for justice, brotherhood, and peace. This is what our call as citizens is. That's what it's calling us to do, to stand up. So we're talking about participating. It means calling Crime Stop, telling Crime Stop what you know. It's trusting an attorney. It is trusting somebody to share the information so that we can clean up the communities, one community at a time. It is letting people know that government can't get the information if we don't give them. And guess what? If we don't trust the government, we get out the government that we don't trust and put in individuals that we trust, because that is the value of our vote. So what civil societies can do, meet the people where they are. Go into the communities in 2023, meet them where they are, encourage them and empower them to talk and let them understand that they own the communities. And by extension, we own Jamaica. So everything that we're talking about on your show this morning, on all the shows to come for 2023, when we talk about juries, you have a responsibility. That's your civic call. Not many people will have the opportunity to serve as a juror. Get up and serve. I hear a call that you can go hear what the criminal say, I hear what the judge say, hear what the lawyer say, and make a decision. What else can you do? Find out your representatives, call them out. Don't be afraid to stand up. And you asked the question, Jade, which I made a note of. What more can we do, or what prevents them from participating? Fear. Fear. Many of us fear being the only person standing up. And if we don't fear the only person standing up, we fear the other person tearing us down.
Yes.
And it's an appropriate time to say, get over your fear. You are not the only person standing up for what is right. And you're not going to be, even if you're crucified for it, there are other people standing beside you for it. So we need to counter the spirit of fear and get people to understand that a one Jamaica we have. No matter what civil society group you belong to. Yes, JFJ will call them out because they have a right to. They have a right to call you out. You may disagree, but JFJ can call them out. Let us have that discussion. And it's also part of calling them out so that we can engineer situations where we can resolve our disputes in an amicable fashion. So we practice it, we call them out, we practice it, we call them out, and we try to get people to understand that Jamaica does not belong to a few. Civic associations are doing their best in their particular areas of interest, but we all have a part to play as citizens by taking whatever chance we can to improve our communities and our country. And you find something, and clean up the area. You have people who are doing fantastic jobs in an environmental way. They're utilizing the recyclables. Let's do something that calls for us to stand up and make the place a much better place. That's what it requires.
All right, thank you so much. We have to end the interview now. Thanks for your time. But before we go, I just want to give each of you, Jade, an opportunity to say, if you're to make one call and contribute to the upcoming throne speech, starting with you, Prof, what would be your one call to the government as they do their throne speech to open Parliament later on? Professor?
Yes, sorry. Tell us immediately when we will start the process of becoming a republic. When will the voice of Jamaicans be heard in that constitutional committee that is to be set up? What are the terms of reference, deadlines with respect to that committee? And when will we begin to engage a public education program that explains the process and clarifies the role of Jamaicans in shaping a constitution that finally belongs to us?
Thank you so much. Ms. Archer?
You know, you just set me on fire a while ago when you asked that question, because you know what my answer is going to be, and it would be remiss of me not to say it, because Prof. Monroe would have my head sign the code of conduct. Can you imagine what that would be like if when they announce the beginning that they say we have all signed this code of conduct? Because what does that mean? It means that every political person, every politician is on record now that says these are the standards to which we are going to hold ourselves for 2023. Remarkable. Just imagine that. That's all I want. Christmas has gone. We're counting down to Christmas of 2023, but we're still taking late Christmas presents, and I don't think the society would mind getting a code of conduct signed by politicians who we, for years, have demonized and thought that they're the worst set in terms of a profession.
Yes.
Let's get it right for 2023 and set a standard.
Thank you.
That's what I think we can do.
And I think we have to acknowledge that the leader of the opposition had, in fact, he signed and made some recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Professor Hamilton, Daniel Archer, for joining us. And we'll
Pleasure
talk
was
soon.
certainly ours.
Keep safe.
Have a good one. All the best. Bye-bye.
We'll take the
Thank
break and then we return.
It's The Bridge 99 FM.
Imagine your advertising dollar reaching your Caribbean and diaspora target beyond borders in a single rotation. It happens only on The Bridge. Call now to advertise 876-669-5000.
Hi, I'm Ronald Thwaites, and I'm the host of The Public Eye and The Open Mind on The Bridge 99 and Irie Jam in the tri-state area. This program will tell you the truth about life backyard. Fair, open talk. No gossip, no slander. We want to listen to your concerns. Also want to help you with your problems in JA. We at The Bridge rate you and affirm our oneness as citizens of this blessed land we love. So join us now on Wednesdays on The Bridge, crossing the waters, linking Jamaicans and Jamaican lovers everywhere.
It's about business for me. I'm in, I'm out, easy access to all my meetings.
It's the range of rooms for me. I love the gym. I love the pool.
The restaurant and the bar do it for me. It's definitely the service. Our hotel in the heart of New Kingston, Jamaica's business capital, seamlessly blending boutique-style guest service with the highest level of professionalism, luxurious accommodation, and every modern amenity. Book now. Call us 876-968-6222 or visit ourhotelja.com.
It's 29 years of the People's Show. Let me salute.
2023. Friday, January the 20th.
Big Mountain. Third World. Cody Ram. Youngster. Morris Andy. Dwayne Stevenson.
Yes, sir.
Luther Sherrington and Ernie Smith. Heavyweight Rock. Glenn Washington. Ding Dong. Gates open 5 p.m. Action begins 7 p.m.
Tickets at 8,500 pre-sold and 9,000 at the gate.
29 years of niceness. The People's Show.
Endorsed by Bridge 99 FM.
What up, New York? What up, Jam Down? It's The Bridge 99 FM.
the people's champion. Our mission is love.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. Our topic today has been setting the human rights agenda for 2023. And with that in vain, I think we want to talk a little bit about what JFJ will be focusing on for 2023.
Or our wish list.
Yeah,
so you can
wish
start
list.
out, yeah.
So I'll start out with my favorite areas. I'll leave yours for you, and I think you can pick it up just from what I say. So I'll start out first of all with NIDS, which is poignant. It's coming up today.
NIDS is your favorite area?
I said my favorite areas. Can you allow me? So NIDS, Mikel knows that I have a long history with my analysis of NIDS. So it's one of the areas that I've been looking forward to seeing some sort of progress in. So I'm happy to hear that something will be said today in Parliament. So I'll be looking out for that. We'll also continue our work in gender-based violence, or work in child rights. In gender-based violence, of course, we want to see some legislative and policy changes. We want to see the Domestic Violence Act being reviewed and amended. It was reviewed a couple years ago with some recommendations, and those were not implemented. So let's see what can happen for this year on this legislative agenda. I'd also want to talk about our National Human Rights Institute. We haven't heard much about it. I was at an event late last year where representatives from the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Ministry would have indicated that this year we should be hearing something concrete about the NHRI. So we'll continue to make our inquiries and also listen out for any important developments in that area. And I will end my part of it on child rights. We have been calling for some amendments to the Child Care and Protection Act, and considering the report that should be tabled shortly in Parliament, we can see where that area of advocacy will become poignant for this first quarter of the year. So I'll leave citizen security to you,
I
Mikel.
don't know why you think those aren't my favorite areas, actually. There's a difference between work requirement and yes, you're passionate about it, but it's not my favorite area. But from a JFJ's perspective, citizen and security clearly is an area of focus for us. So we will continue our advocacy around the bail bill because we've spoken that JFJ, we don't support these kind of draconian measures at all. And I think the government needs to wheel and come again. Quite frankly, the government needs to leave the Bail Act alone.
Absolutely.
But let me behave myself this week. It's the first week back at work. We're also going to be looking out for the Enhanced Security Measures Act. So a lot of advocacy will be expected as soon as that piece of legislation is tabled. But even before the tabling of it, you can expect us to have more to say around the state of public emergency. So generally, crime and security, citizen security issues will be a focus of the organization. There are two issues that are passions of mine. And disabilities is the implementation of that piece of legislation. I think JFJ, we need to speak a little bit more on it. There's a video that is being circulated of someone who's visually impaired, I think blind, who fell in one of those, what you call it now, on the road, on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that you have a Disabilities Act and you have so many accident-prone things happening. When you talk about how the government is moving ahead, I don't think the agency is moving as quickly as we would want. I don't think the government institutionally and infrastructurally is doing what ought to be done. So I think the Disabilities Act is something that JFJ needs to focus a little bit more around. My ultimate passion is around constitutional reform. So
I was waiting.
I and I must use this opportunity quickly to laud Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Calder. She has some really good set of sessions going on. She has one coming up this Thursday, I believe. Please tune in for those who are listening in. Yes, so we're in a strong competition and we're partners. So we celebrate and advertise where we can. So JAMP will be having a session this week on recall and impeachment. So you heard the conversations earlier. You're voting government, but you should be able to vote them out. And there are a couple I think we need to hold to greater levels of account, quite frankly. So when you talk about constitutional reform, how to get rid of parliamentarians or whomever, how to hold them accountable as citizens, we want petitions to be legally binding things now, not the 15,000 and the office of the Prime Minister may look at it. Mm-hmm. But when I issue my petitions and get my signatures on something, what legal obligation should the government have to ensure that they review whatever I engender interest around? So those are some key issues, electoral reforms and so on. Nobody not calling election when they feel no wind blowing. You should have fixed election date, fixed term. The things around, the job descriptions for our ministers and so on, those things are critical. So those things are what I'm passionate about. And it does coincide nicely with human rights work. So I hope to see a little bit more of that for 2023. So JFJ will definitely be talking more on constitutional reform later on in the year.
Yes. All right. Well, I think the only other thing I'd like to highlight about our plans for 2023 is our Justice Tour. It has several components, but one of the things I want to highlight are our community interventions. We heard Daniel and Professor Hamilton speak extensively about how much we need to go back to that ground level work with community members, and I just want our listeners to know that that is our intention for the year. We have several interventions upcoming, and we'll be sure to let the public know on our social media pages, so please follow us at JA for Justice on Instagram, on Twitter, where we would be making those announcements about those interventions.
Yeah, and these things are critical because when you look at it, one of the challenges I have with civil society organizations generally, we tend to think that advocacy is talking directly to parliamentarians only. And sometimes we misunderstand the levels of understanding of parliamentarians, and we tend to approach advocacy from this adversarial. Sometimes you have to rough up people, don't get me wrong, and I'm queen of that when necessary. But I think sometimes we have to understand that people genuinely don't understand the issues, and that's fine. The impetus is for them to seek that understanding as well, and not think that we're coming from an adversarial approach when we're not. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of meeting people in the middle from both parliamentarians, decision makers, and civil society is important. And we talk too much up in our ear, and if you start talk where people can't understand, and I'm not talking condescending behavior and language where things that people understand English, that's not what I'm saying. But sometimes we need to be able to translate the information in a way where people get a sense of how they fit in, how they understand the issues, and so on. You go back to this Office of the Children's Advocate report. One of the institutional failure is that people were too fearful. People understand whistleblower clearly because the whistle shouldn't blow a long time on what was happening in that particular situation. So I think we need to do a little bit more from our side at JFJ and other civil society with public education. We're doing it. That's why we have the radio program. But we need to go down on the ground a little bit more. Broke it down. Yes.
Yes, I'm aware of your catchphrase, too much high-level dialogue.
That's not how I speak, actually. It's only too highfalutin and technical and legal. I don't know if you broke it down where people can't understand. You see the very point I'm making. You hear you talking now? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that JFJ and other civil society organization, we need to be able to speak in a way that the Jamaican people not understand only in terms of hearing the words, but comprehend and see their role in actioning the issues. So when we are talking about SOE, we need to be able, constitutional rights and so on, absolutely important. But we need to say the police, the soldier them, then if you go home to their yard, we need to take the police out of the courthouse them, then can litigate for salary. Those things we need to be able to speak in a way that Jamaican people can get a sense of where we're coming from, why we're doing this, and the broader implications it has for crime fighting, for example. Yeah? So that's my wish list for 2023. Broke it down for justice for all. Yes.
Wow. With that impassioned plea, I'm going to close out the show. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Let's Start Justice. We will be back again next week. The hiatus is over. 1 p.m. next week, Tuesday.
Yes. Yes, so shall forget the days. I'm Michael Jackson,
And
Executive
Jade
Director.
Williams. Thank you again for joining us.
Have a good week.
Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all.
One Jamaica, looking at the bigger picture.
So anytime you're passing on Garden Town Road, remember to check out the MDs that are. Flags and Jamaican items also are here. Key rings and necklaces and pendants. See? So big up the Bridge 99 FM to the world. You see me? That's Malikat say it, you know. Alright?
Someone must move.